Yes. Let's bring in the jury.
Please stand for the jury.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Martinez, you may call the next rebuttal witness.
The state calls Jacob Mefford.
Please come forward right up here to be sworn.
Can you spell your last name for me?
M-E-F-O-R-D.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please walk around and have a seat.
Your name, sir?
Jacob Mefford,
Drawing your attention back to the year 2000, where were you working?
prepaid legal services,
When did you begin working with prepaid legal services?
April 22nd, 2000.
And as part of working there at prepaid legal, did you have occasion to meet an individual by the name of Travis Alexander?
Yes.
And how is it that you met him? Were you guys upline? Were you next to each other? How is it that you met him and whether or not you became friends with him?
Met him through the business. We were sidelined, so no financial interest up or down. Just met through the business.
And in terms of the meetings that we're talking about, would you see him at these meetings that were held on a semi-annual basis and perhaps other meetings? Is that when you would see him?
Yes.
Were you closer friends than that?
Yes.
And how close of friends were you and he?
Very close.
Would you socialize when you weren't working or not?
Yes.
And sir, throughout this time, did there come a time when you met somebody by the name of Jodi Arias?
Yes.
Is she in court today?
Yes.
Tell me where she is seated and what she is wearing.
Sitting right there, wearing a blue shirt, glasses.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the identification of the defendant?
Yes.
And you met her, was it part of a PPL function that you met her?
Yes.
And where was this function being held?
First time I met her was in San Bernardino, California at a Hilton Hotel.
And what kind of function was it?
It was a prepaid legal training.
And when you say prepaid legal training, what are you talking about?
It is a weekly event where we would all come together as distributors to learn how to do the business.
Is that the same thing as the events that we've been talking about that are held on a semi-annual basis, or is that something different?
It's different.
And the events that are, I guess, nationwide, how often are those for PPL?
2 from corporate, 1 from your individual organization.
When you say there's 2 from corporate and 1 from the individual organization, the 2 from corporate, when are they?
Normally 1 in the spring and normally 1 in the fall.
1 in the spring and 1 what?
In the fall.
All right, and in the spring, do you have any idea when you say the spring, when that would be?
Yep, normally March.
So there would be 1 in March, and in the fall, when would that be?
Approximately like September-ish.
And then you also talked about a third meeting, if you will, that's open to everybody. When was that?
Most of the time they were in June or July.
And what's the difference between the one in June and July and the other 2?
Just who they're hosted by. The one in June and July is hosted by the individual distributors. The ones in the spring and the fall are hosted by actual corporate.
Did you have occasion to attend the March 2007 corporate meeting?
Yes,
And where was that?
it was in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
And while you were there, did you have occasion to observe the interaction between the defendant and Mr. Alexander?
Yes,
And were they affectionate with each other, yes or no?
yes,
Did you see that on more than one occasion or not?
yes.
How often would you see that they were affectionate during that?
Just about every time that they were together.
And during that time, did you also have occasion to videotape their interaction together back in March of 2007 at this Oklahoma City meeting?
Yes,
I'm going to show you exhibit number 632. Prior to coming to court, did you take a look at this?
yes,
And does that include the interaction between the defendant and Mr. Alexander back in March of 2007?
yes.
I move the admission of exhibit 632.
We approach.
You may. .632 is admitted.
So who is this individual to the upper left-hand corner that seems to be doing most of the talking?
Travis Alexander.
And there appears to be something blondish or white on his lap. Who is that?
Jodi. Arias.
And this individual here to the right, do you see who that is?
Right next to Jodi,
Right.
Dan Freeman.
And to his left, the individual in the white shirt.
Christopher Hughes.
And the person that is sitting there with the black shirt, who is that?
Charlie Ethington.
Do you know about what time this video was shot?
Somewhere between probably 11 p.m. and midnight.
And this is after the meetings?
Yes.
At some point in this video, what does the defendant do? Do you know whether or not she keeps her head down there or not?
No, eventually she looks like she gets bored and she lifts his arm off of her and sits up.
And how long is this video approximately?
5 minutes.
And after this video was shot, what happened? Did the people go about their separate ways or not?
Yeah.
And in terms of the defendant and Ms. Arias, did they leave together or did they leave separately?
I'm not completely sure.
Now, did you also have occasion to be with them or continue knowing the two of them after March of 2007?
Yes.
And did you specifically have occasion to be with the both of them in June of 2007?
Yes.
What was the occasion for that?
It was an incentive trip hosted by Prepaid Legal for top leaders, and we were in Huntington Beach, California.
And do you know whether or not Mr. Alexander was there?
Yes, he was.
And was the defendant there also?
Yes, she was.
And did you have occasion to have some interaction with them during this particular event?
Yes.
How is it that they were between the two of them during this particular event? Were they distant? Were they together? How were they?
Affectionate, like a couple.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 633 and see if you're familiar with this.
Careful, there's water there.
Okay. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a photo of Jodi and Travis.
And where was the photo taken?
It was taken right outside of their room.
What room?
Their room at the Hyatt Hotel and Resort in Huntington Beach.
Okay. And the date was June of 2007?
Yes.
Move for the admission of Exhibit 633.
No objection.
33 is admitted.
Let's take a look at Exhibit 633. And she's wearing what? What is this?
That's a robe from the Hyatt.
Is that where you were staying?
Yes.
And who is this individual here?
Travis Alexander.
About what time of the day was this taken?
Approximately 9, 10 o'clock at night.
And was this after any activities involving PPL or not?
Yes.
And the activities ended about what time?
About the time when the sun goes down. So whatever time that was in June, so probably around, I'd say 8 o'clock-ish, something like that.
And after this photograph was taken, were there any days left in this vacation that was involved?
Yes.
And did they continue to be affectionate towards each other such that you could see or the public could see?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Cross-examination.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, from what you said just moments ago, you were a good friend of Travis's for a number of years, correct?
Yes.
And in that regard, then, would I be correct in assuming that you knew he was of the Mormon faith?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that you saw Travis and Jodi as a couple for the first time in January of 2007, correct?
I didn't say that.
Okay. You said you met her for the first time in 2007, right?
I didn't say that either.
At the lobby of the San Bernardino Hilton?
I didn't give a date, but that's when I met her, yeah.
Okay.
That's
When was
where I
it?
met her.
When was that then?
Approximately fall of 2006, I believe, somewhere around there.
Fall of 2006. And then the next time you see them together is in March of 2007, correct?
No.
Okay, when's the next time you see them together?
I retract that. You're right. March 2007 was the last time I saw them after the first time that I met Jodi, when I saw Jodi and Travis together. You're right, in the fall of 2006. So the next time that I saw them would be March of 2007.
Okay. So the San Bernardino Hilton was fall of 2006. Next time was March of 2007. This convention of we just saw the video of, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next time would have been Huntington Beach in June of 2007. This Exhibit 633, when that was taken, correct?
That I can recall, yes.
Okay. And was that the last time?
The last time that I saw them together?
Yes, as a
No.
couple? Okay. And when was the last time you saw them together as a couple?
I can't quite recall. It would have been sometime later in 2007. I don't have a specific date, but sometime later in 2007.
Okay. You say that you saw them being affectionate towards each other. We saw the video, we saw the picture. This happened in March of 2007 and June of 2007, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you had also said to me when we spoke the other day that you knew there was a time when the relationship went underground, I think was your words, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And did you have any knowledge of the fact that Travis and Jodi were having a sexual relationship in 2008?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Redirect.
In terms of a sexual relationship, did you and Mr. Alexander have a relationship such that you would kiss and tell?
No.
Would you have a relationship with him that whatever sexual exploits you were involved in, that you would share those with him?
No.
Was that the type of relationship that the two of you had?
No.
You talked about seeing them together after this June 2007 photograph, which is this one. Where did you see them together?
At other prepaid legal functions.
And with regard to the prepaid legal functions that you saw them, were they speaking with each other? Would they talk to each other?
Yes.
And were they around each other?
Yes.
Did they show any affection during those times?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the jury for this witness? You may step down. The state may call its next witness.
State calls Amanda Webb.
Please come forward right up here to be sworn.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Please walk right around here and have a seat.
May I have your name, please?
My name is Amanda Webb.
And who do you work for?
I work for Walmart.
And which Walmart do you work for?
I work for the store in Salinas, 2458. It's on North Main Street.
And how long have you worked at the Salinas store at the Walmart?
I've worked at the Salinas store for about 5 months now. I've worked for Walmart for 5 years.
And what are your present duties, or what is it that you do for Walmart? And if you don't mind pulling the microphone just a little bit, or you can move up. There you go.
I am an asset protection manager. I investigate internal theft. I investigate reports. I help the police officers investigate credit card theft, and I do a lot of that stuff.
As part of your duties, are you familiar how the registers work there at Walmart?
Yes, I am.
And are you also familiar with the procedure or the process involved in a return of merchandise from Walmart?
Yes.
Does it make a difference when somebody is returning something whether or not they have a receipt?
There is a different process for each way, but yes, there's a certain way we do that.
With regard to somebody who has a receipt, what is the process that the Salinas store undertakes if somebody wants to return an item? Generally speaking, what's the process?
From the beginning, so the customer comes in with their receipt and their item. The cashier will take their receipt and scan the barcode at the very bottom of the receipt, and then at that point they'll match up what they call a SKU number or a UPC number from the item.
Let me slow you down a little bit by looking at, for example, 237.008. Do you recognize this as a Walmart receipt?
I do.
And is this a receipt that was issued by the store that you are currently working at?
It is, yes.
How do you know that?
Right at the top where it says ST number and it says 2458, that is my store number.
Okay, so you were telling us now about somebody who comes in with a receipt. Generally speaking, what is the first thing that happens? Do they go to any register, or do they go to a certain register? How does that work?
You generally go to customer service. You don't have to, but that's where they direct all the returns. If it's a long line, sometimes they will take you at other registers, but they do direct you to the customer service.
Let's assume, just for the sake of this particular inquiry, that they do go to customer service and there's somebody there. What is the first thing that's done? That the person presents a receipt, they present an item, and just take us through the process.
So what they'll do again is they'll scan the barcode at the very bottom, right under this
All right,
TC
let me,
number. So they scan that barcode right there, and it brings up the transaction in our
all
register.
right, so when you say that they scan the barcode and it brings up the transaction, what does it bring up? What is it that the person who is going to now initiate this refund, what is it that they're going to be looking at now?
It actually doesn't pull up anything on their screen particularly.
Okay.
It just pulls up that transaction, so whatever's being returned gets linked back to that transaction.
So in other words, their computer knows that they purchased whatever was sold under this barcode.
Yes.
Is this an internal kind of barcode that Walmart uses, or is this something that is identified to the particular products that are sold?
No, that's just the barcode for the transaction itself. It's to link that transaction to these items.
And for example, does this include the date and time that this transaction was made?
Yes.
So that they pull this up, and then what happens?
Then they'll match the SKU number from the item to the SKU number that's on the receipt, so
You
that
said
they're,
you used the word SKU. Is that SKU?
it's SKEW.
SKEW. And what is it that number is? If we're looking at this, for example.
It's a universal code for all items. So say it's a non-Walmart brand, say it's a particular brand, that SKU number may be the same SKU number in another store. It just links that item to the number that's being scanned, so you know the price.
So as I understand it, the SKU number that you're talking about comes with the item that's being returned, right?
Yes.
So far, what we've talked about is this at the bottom has to do with Walmart and the receipt and the purchase, correct?
Yes.
The SKU number has to do with the item that's actually being brought to the counter for the refund, right?
Yes.
And if we look down here, for example, this 5G, which is, let's assume 5 gallon, there's a bunch of numbers here. Is that the SKU number that we're talking about?
That is the SKU number, yes.
And every item that is sold by Walmart, does it include the SKU number?
Yes.
So what happens then? The person comes in with a receipt, they have this item, they have the SKU that has a SKU number on it. What happens then? How do you ensure, for example, that it actually was purchased at Walmart?
Just base it on the receipt. You take the customer's word for it.
And then you have this receipt, correct? That
Yes.
tells you. So for example, if they were bringing back a 5-gallon can and this number wasn't on there, then it wasn't sold at Walmart then, right?
Yes.
So then what happens?
Once they match those up, they'll have some sort of documentation on that paper on the receipt, the original receipt that the customer actually retains after. Generally, they cross out the item that they have been returning or circle it, and they always put like an initial next to that.
So let me stop you there. So for example, if we were talking about this one right here at the bottom, the individual would either cross it out or circle it as part of the process there, correct?
Yes.
And
That's
then
some
they-
sort of documentation.
And they would initial it, right?
Yes.
So for example, in looking at this exhibit that we're talking about, exhibit 237.008, based on this particular process that you're talking about, since nothing's crossed out, circled, or there's no initials, was anything refunded involving this?
I would say no.
All right.
There is human error, but I would say no.
So then what happens?
At that point, they will process it through the computer system, and the customer will get their money. They have to sign another sheet of paper with their signature on it, and they'll get their original receipt back with the documentation that item's been returned. And we do that so that they can't go with the same item to another store and return it again.
So with regard to the computer record that may be generated as part of the return, you said, well, there's I guess, the computer notation somewhere that this item actually was refunded?
There's not anything in the computer. I mean, we keep track of every single transaction, so it's in the computer system that way. It goes back into our on-hands, but there's not a computer that specifically says, you know, this item has been returned.
How about at the register? Is there an indication that that item was returned at the register pursuant to what went on?
Yes.
And so that's the place to look if we're going to take a look for
Yes.
whether or not a refund was made, right?
Yeah.
How many cash registers are there or were there back on June 3rd of 2008 at Walmart?
There was, I believe, 25 on the front end. Then there's a few outlying registers, such as sporting goods, electronics. So I'd say probably 27, 28, maybe 30.
And this receipt that we're talking about involves a transaction on June 3rd of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And on June 3rd of 2008, were you able to go back and determine how many cash registers were open at Walmart on that particular date?
Yes.
And was this that you checked done for a 24-hour period?
Yes.
And did you check each and every single cash register, including the ones that don't normally give refunds, to see what refunds were given on that particular day?
Yes.
And those records, are they included in exhibit number? Exhibit number 634.
Yeah. Those are all the transactions that I printed out that day for that time frame.
And these are the transactions for each and every register that was operating on June 3rd of 2008 on that particular day.
Yes.
Does that include the registers that were not, design may not be the word, but that were designated to refund?
Yes.
You indicated that sometimes that does happen, right?
It does, and there's certain items such as jewelry that you would have to return in the jewelry department, so there are returns sometimes on other registers.
And these records represent each and every one of those cash registers, if you will, on June 3rd, 2008, involving these transactions as to whether or not there was a refund, right?
Yes.
The refund, if there is one, is there a record made at the time that the refund is generated?
Yes, anytime an item is refunded, we keep that record in what they call an electronic journal. So the register sends it to this electronic journal. And so anytime anything's purchased, returned, refunded, it's always kept in the system.
And are these records kept in a normal course of business?
Yes.
And the information that's being kept, is that being generated at the time that the refund is going through?
Yes.
And these are the records that you actually pulled up for June 3rd of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the system and how it works, correct?
Yes. I work with that a lot.
Move for the admission of Exhibit 634.
You may. 634 is admitted.
Let's talk about these records. For example, as we look at these, I want to have you focus on the number that's right here on the upper right-hand corner. Do you see that?
Yeah, the 3?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that a terminal number?
That's the register number.
And then if we look at it here, it talks about reading. What does that mean?
That's the total sales that they had through that register.
So if that register, for example, on that date of June 3rd of 2008, generated sales in the amount of $3,233.34, right?
Yes.
It then talks about line voids. What are those?
That would be items that have been voided through the transaction.
At that register?
Yes, at that particular register. This all pertains to that one register.
And so as to register number 3, it also has returns on it, right?
Yes.
It has zeros on it. What does that mean?
That means nothing was returned on that register that day.
So for example, if we're talking about exhibit number 237.008, and we're talking about this 5-gallon item right here, that was not returned on June 3rd of 2008 at that register.
Correct.
And no refund was made, at least at that register, right?
Yes.
And then it talks about discount. What is that about?
That would be associate discount. So through Walmart, we have our own discounts that we do get, and that would show up in there as a discount.
And the daily sales, why do we have that? And then we also have the reading. What is the difference there?
The difference is the money that's actually in the register and the money that they're making. So there's a difference in that.
And then we talked about the net refund items. What does that mean?
That's the items that have been returned. So there was 0 items. That's what that refers to. There was 0 items returned on that register.
So in this case, with regard to register number 3, was this 5-gallon gas can, and see in exhibit number 237.008, was that returned at this terminal number 3?
No.
How about this one, number 4 at the top? Were there any returns there?
There was not.
So again, the question 237.008, which is this Walmart receipt, was this 5-gallon item returned there?
Nothing was returned on that register, no.
How about register number 5? Was anything returned there?
No, there was nothing returned on that.
So again, the question is, was this item that's at the bottom of this receipt, 237.008, was that returned at that register?
No.
How about register number 7? Did that have any returns that day?
There was no returns on that register that day, no.
How about register number 8? Any returns?
No, there was no returns.
And this is all for June 3rd of 2008, correct?
Yes. No returns done on
Number
that
9,
register.
any returns on that register?
No.
Number 10, any returns on that register?
No.
Now we go to number 13. How come we don't have 11 and 12? What's going on?
11 and 12 were operating that day, so nobody jumped onto that register and operated it, so there's no journal of that.
And so on number 13, were there any returns?
No.
$14, that register, did that have any returns that day?
No.
Then we skip all the way to 43, terminal number 43. Were any of the other registers between the one that we looked at, number 14, and number 43, working or operational back on June 3rd of 2008?
No, there would be a journal for that. When I look through the journal itself, it just shows me the registers that were operating. So if that register was not operating that day, it won't show it to me at all.
All right. And if it's not operating, would it generate a return at all?
No.
How about Terminal 44? Did that have any returns?
No.
Terminal 46, any returns?
No.
Terminal 45, did that have any returns?
No.
Terminal 52, did that have some returns?
It did.
And how much was the return on that one?
It was for $9.93.
And if we take a look at Exhibit 237.008, do you see the amount that is the one at the bottom is how much it is?
$12.96, yes.
So since the price is $12.96, does that mean that that item that we are looking at here is not the item that's represented at register number 52?
That's correct.
Because the prices don't match, correct?
Yes.
But did you also check at this register to see whether or not this item, this 5-gallon item, was returned?
Yes.
And had it been returned?
No.
Then if we look at the second page that's attached to this particular 52, we have some more records. What do these indicate that we haven't seen before?
That's the actual transaction that was returned or refunded. So as you can see, the shirt tie, that there's a SKU number on there next to it, and then it says $9.93 with the minus right after that. That was returned, and then they exchanged it for the shirt below it for the same price.
So what we're talking about with regard to register number 52, there was a return or a refund, correct?
Yes.
And then the second page that's attached to it shows us what the item was and the amount, correct?
Yes.
Register 59, did that have any refunds?
It did.
And how much money was involved?
$223.05.
And attached to it, is there an itemization of all of the items that were refunded?
Yeah, every refund transaction for that register, I printed out and attached to each of the.
And so in this case, there's 1, 2. This is a layaway cancel, correct?
Yes, so that the money that they had put down was refunded to that customer.
3, 4. 5. And 6 items, right?
Yes, and as you can see, the TC number, that's what relates back to that original receipt with the barcode at the bottom.
You indicated something about the what number?
The TC number right here,
Uh-huh.
right under receipt number 1, that is relating to that barcode at the very bottom, and that's how you could connect that receipt to that actual transaction, that return itself.
So what you're talking about is the TC number that we see here, if this were the receipt, would be at the bottom down here, correct?
Yes,
And then we see TC number there, right?
yes.
Did you check the TC numbers throughout the store for June 3rd of 2008 to determine whether or not this receipt had ever been brought back for a refund or any other activity?
I didn't check the TC number, no. I checked the specific item, and then I went through each register and checked that registers for that item.
All right. Then register 65, any
There was
returns?
No returns done that day.
Register 67, any returns there?
No.
Register 70, any returns?
No.
And register 73, did that have any returns?
It did.
And how much was the amount?
$3.20.
And line voids, that's something different, right?
Yes.
And so if we look at this one, we know that the $3.20 involves something called bounty nap or something like that, correct?
Yes.
That would be napkins, wouldn't it? Or do you know?
I believe, yes, that would be paper towels.
And Register 76, any returns on that one?
No,
Register 77, any returns on that one?
no.
And Register 79, any returns there?
There was for
And-
7388.
Then if we take a look at the accompanying documentation, we have what actually was returned, right?
Yes,
It appears to be a prescription, right?
yes.
Then we have a very large packet at Terminal 92. Can you tell us why it would be that Terminal 92 has so much or so many returns, whereas the other ones that we've been looking at do not have that?
That's actually a customer service register. So that's where all returns are normally done.
And the amount of returns was how much at that register that day?
$4,441.55.
And each and every one of those items that was returned is listed or attached to this particular packet involving terminal number 92,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
And in any of those, you've reviewed those, right?
I did. Took me a
Do
very
any
long
of those
time.
include this item that we've been talking about here, this 5-gallon item that's down here at the bottom?
It did not.
And Terminal 93, it's also a lot of documents there, correct?
Yes, it's also another customer service register.
And this indicates the returns and the amount, correct?
Yes,
And it also includes a listing of every single item that was returned, correct?
it does, yes.
And you were the person who actually checked this, correct?
I did. It took me a very long time to go through everything.
And in this particular terminal or register 93, was this 5-gallon item ever refunded?
No,
The last register that you checked was 95, correct?
yes,
It did have a return on there, right?
it did, yes.
And the amount was how much?
6353.
And if we take a look at the attachment to it, what are we looking at there?
It's a battery return and a battery core return. It was a car battery.
So after your review of all of the registers, after your review of whatever computer's work may have been done there, and after a review of Exhibit 237.008, was this 5-gallon can, that we now know as a can of gas, was it ever returned for a refund on June 3rd of 2008?
It was not, and I actually researched that SKU number specifically for about a week. It hadn't been returned or purchased until about a week later.
So in other words, after looking at this, you researched it further to find if there had been another purchase involving this particular gas can, correct?
Yes.
And when was the next time that you found that there actually had been a purchase?
It was about a week and a half after the time frame.
And even during that week and a half from June 3rd to when you found this item being purchased, did you ever find any indication whatsoever in the records that this item had ever been refunded, ever at the Salinas store?
Not in the time frame I searched it, no, it had not been refunded.
I don't have any other questions.
Cross-examination?
No questions, Your Honor.
Any questions from the jury? It looks like we do have one. Any other questions? Counsel, please. A juror has a question for you. In the return system, is there a way to refund cash with a dummy SKU or no SKU at all?
You have to have a SKU number to do the return. So There is a way you could return it, but it would have to have some sort of a SKU number to link it into the system. They can't just give you money for an item. It has to go through the system and it has to have a SKU number. It has to have something attaching it to something in Walmart. So you can't just return something and just get money for it and just say that's what the item is.
Follow up, Mr. Martinez.
As I understand it, every single item that gets returned or refunded has to have this SKU number attached to it, correct?
Yes.
So even if it doesn't have one, is there a refund, or that's given or not?
We would go find an item that either has the same exact SKU number, or we would have to go through the system and find a SKU number for that.
And without a SKU number, would that ever be refunded?
No.
And whether it's a dummy number or a non-dummy number, was there ever a 5-gallon gas can returned on June 3rd of 2008 to the Walmart?
No, not that I researched. I didn't find anything that had a gas can involved in it.
Nope. Nothing else, thank you.
Mr. Nuri.
No questions, Your Honor.
Any other questions from the jury? Thank you. You may step down. The state may call its next witness.
State calls Chelsea Young.
Please come forward to be sworn.
Can you spell your first and last name?
Chelsey. Young, Y-O-U-N-G.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Your name, please?
Chelsea Young,
And who do you work for?
Tesoro.
If you don't mind pulling the microphone just a little bit towards you. That's the whole thing. And what is Tesoro? What kind of business is Tesoro?
We're an oil company.
And what does Tesoro do? Do they sell gas, or explain to me what goes on with Tesoro?
We sell gas mostly on the West Coast, at gas stations.
And so what do you do for them?
I'm a manager in the IT department.
And what are your duties in the IT department? What is it that you do with regard to the gas stations in the West Coast area?
We support all of the equipment from the gas pumps into the store, fuel and merchandise sales, supporting any IT-related issues, making sure that everything's functioning, the record-keeping, accounting data, credit card data, every kind of sale that happens inside and outside the store.
When you say inside or outside of the store, are we talking about gas stations?
Yes.
And with regard to outside of the store, if there's a purchase of gasoline outside of the store, is your area or the place where where do you work? What town do you?
I work in San Antonio, Texas.
And with regard to any transaction that is done, for example, in a gas station in the West Coast, do you keep records of that at your office in Texas?
We do. We have records of every transaction inside and outside at every station.
So how does that work? If somebody, for example, is at the gas pump and they take a credit card and they swipe it through, what ends up happening to the record-keeping function of that swiping of the credit card? Does that go to you? Does that go to them being the local affiliate, or does it go to both? How does that work?
It goes to both. It's stored locally at the store, and then it's backed up to our office for record keeping. We've got archive data. All of the credit card and transactions for accounting is all taken care of at the San Antonio office.
And at the San Antonio office, when there is that, again, we're keeping with the outside, when there is that swipe of that credit card, does the record that gets generated, does that get generated at the time that, or near the time that the person swipes the credit card, Is that when it gets generated?
It's real time, give 2 to 3 minutes.
And with regard to it being generated, is it generated, this record in San Antonio, is it generated with the information, if you will, from, for example, the credit card that's being swiped?
Yes.
And do you keep the whole credit card number, or do you just keep certain digits?
We keep, due to PCI, we keep certain digits.
You used an acronym there. What was that?
It's PCI compliance. We can't keep cardholder information, the full digits any longer. We can keep the last 4 of the card.
So apparently, in order to be compliant with whatever regulation is out there, you can't keep the whole number, but you just keep the last 4 numbers, right?
Correct.
And those last 4 numbers, are they transmitted as part of this sale that's going on to your office?
Yes, the full transaction data is processed over to a credit card. For the IT department, it's the last 4 of the card and the cardholder's name.
And are these records kept in the normal course of business by Tesoro as part of their business practice?
Yes.
And you're one of the individuals that's in charge of this particular area, correct?
Correct.
And so what about if we have a transaction inside of the store and, again, a credit card is used? Is it the same procedure or is it a different procedure?
It's the same procedure.
And so are those, again, those records that are generated inside the store or from a transaction inside the store, are they kept in the normal course of business as you've described by Tesoro?
Yes.
Ma'am, with regard to somebody, let's say, generally speaking, if they go out to the gas pumps outside, and let's say that they swipe the card 2 times. Let's assume that for this hypothetical. What happens if in that short period of time, that same individual goes to swipe the card a 3rd time? Do they get the gas dispensed if they're outside, or is something triggered at Tesoro?
It'll give them an AB transmission error. The AB transmission error on the 3rd credit card swipe is a method of fraud prevention. So on the first 2 card swipes, the transactions would go through. On the 3rd card swipe, the customer would be forced to go inside to the store and present the card to the cashier so that the cashier can identify that the person using the card is the card holder, and they can process the sale at the register.
It's not that the sale won't go through, it's just that the person is being required to go inside then,
Correct.
right? And it's a fraud prevention sort of issue, correct?
Correct.
Let's take a look at some exhibits here. This is exhibit number 237.017. It does say Tesoro, and it does talk SLC. Is that Salt Lake City, Utah?
It is.
And you're familiar with this receipt. You've looked at it before, correct?
Yes.
And is this Tesoro gas station one of the gas stations that provides the records to your division in San Antonio, Texas?
It is.
And if we look at it, it does talk about one regular, what are we talking about? Is this a sale of gas or is this a sale of something else?
The regular is the fuel, the regular fuel grade, and this was on pump number 2 for 9.583 gallons.
Okay. And if we look down here at the bottom, what is the date that this says that this transaction was approved?
June 6, 2008.
And the time, please?
4:05.
And 42
AM?
seconds?
Yes,
And that's AM is what, I think I cut you off, right?
correct.
And the individual whose card was involved,
Jodi Arias,
and the last 4 digits of the card she used was what?
2015.
Was this done at the pump, or was this done,
This was done at the pump.
was this done
sorry, can you move it back up?
this way?
To the bottom. I'm sorry, this was done at the register. At the very bottom, you see POS 1.
Okay, at the very bottom, you said something about POS. What is POS?
That's the register, point of sale.
All right,
so
and so
this-
then we have something down here, it says cashier, right?
Yeah, cashier number 180, which would be
And-
tied to somebody's name.
And then it has a date and a time, correct?
Correct.
If we then compare it to this 237.016, and if we go to the bottom of it, do we see a cashier here or not?
No, this is because it has the driver ID that indicates that it was done out at the pump.
So this was done at the pump, correct?
Correct.
And what pump are we talking about?
This was also on pump number 2.
And what are they buying?
They bought regular fuel at 10.672 gallons.
And at a price of $3.85, correct?
Correct.
The time on this is what? Do you see that right there?
3:57 a.m.
If we take a look at the previous exhibit, which is 237.017, and we look at the time, you see that time there?
Yes,
Was this done after or before the previous sale?
after.
And they're both for gasoline, correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, did you also have a chance to see whether or not there was a third transaction that was involved with this Tesoro?
Yes, we did find a third transaction.
And you did, let me show you an exhibit to see if, and you don't need to refer to it if you know, but if you do, let me know and we'll talk about that. Was there a third transaction?
There was.
And the third transaction, was it after this one that was at 3:57, or was it after the one that was at 4:05 in the morning?
I believe it was after the 3:57.
So it would have been after this one right here, 3:57, which is exhibit number 237.016, correct?
Correct.
In terms of the time, if I show you exhibit 635, will that refresh your recollection as to the time? Just look at the time when that transaction took place.
Yes. It was at 4:01.
So if that one was at 4:01 in the morning, the second transaction, that would mean that the first transaction was at 3:57, right?
Correct.
4:01 is 4 minutes later, correct?
Correct.
Was that transaction at the pump or was that inside?
It was done at the pump.
And so now we have the two transactions going on. Was there a credit card that was used?
There was.
Was it the same credit card that was being used here, the one that ended at 2015?
It was the same credit card.
And how much gas was purchased?
I believe it was 40.
Well, let me show you exhibit 635 and see if that refreshes your recollection. Read it, and after you read it, see if that refreshes your recollection as to how much gas was purchased. Go ahead and read it to yourself.
It was 1960.
No, go ahead and read it to yourself. Are you done?
I'm sorry. Yes.
All right, if I may have it back. How much gas was purchased?
It was $19 and
No, in terms of the amount.
it's 5 gallons.
And what was the amount?
19 and some change.
All right, take a look at exhibit 635. If that refreshes your recollection as to the amount.
1965.
Okay. So if this was the second transaction that was involved, and this one here was the third transaction, exhibit 237.015, in terms of sequencing, because the card had already been used twice outside, is that when the rule about fraud comes in and the person has to go inside? Is that how that works?
That's correct.
So in this case, how many transactions for gas was there?
3.
And there was initially exhibit 237.016. How many gallons of gas were purchased?
10 gallons, 10.672 gallons.
672. And then the next one was 5 gallons, correct?
Correct.
Or approximately. And then the last one under 237.017 was how many gallons?
9.583.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Showing you exhibit 237.017. We were just looking at a moment ago. this is your store in Salt Lake City, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In your capacity, what was your job title again?
I'm a manager at IT.
Okay. In your job capacity then as an IT manager, would you have any knowledge about whether or not someone can pay at the pump with cash at this store?
They cannot pay at the pump with cash.
Okay. They can pay inside with cash?
That's correct.
And if someone pays inside with cash, the cashier wouldn't collect personal information, name, driver's license, anything else. They say they want $20 on pump 2, they get $20 and that's the end of it, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So if someone wanted to make a cash transaction, the transaction wouldn't contain their name, credit card number, and the time they did it, would it?
No, it would not.
Thank you, ma'am.
Redirect.
But in this case, ma'am, the transaction that took place inside the store as set out in Exhibit 237.017, was that cash or was that credit?
This was credit.
And was it for items such as potato chips or other items like that, or was it for gas?
It was for gas.
And how much gas was purchased by Jodi Arias on June 6th of 2008 at 4:05 inside of this store?
Objection beyond scope of cross.
What is the purchase amount here?
Objection beyond the scope of cross.
Approach, please.
Was a credit transaction, correct? Correct. And what's the amount that was paid on this credit transaction?
$36.98.
I don't have any other questions.
Any questions from the jury for this witness? Thank you. You may step down. The state may call its next witness.
State called Deanna Reed.
You may.
And if 2001, did
Of
you say?
2001, yeah.
Had, for example, had he decided to go behind your back and start seeing people at the beginning or the middle of the relationship, was there any way that you would have been able to find out that you know of?
No.
So he tells you this, and so is that sort of the time that you break up?
Yes, it is.
And you return then in what? What year do you return in month?
I returned in November of 2001.
And when you return, what city did you return to? Where were you living back
I
then?
was living in Riverside, California.
And where was Mr. Alexander living back then?
He was also living in Riverside.
Did you then, after you came back, did you have occasion to start meeting with him, talking with him, or seeing him, or anything like that?
Yes, several weeks after I had been home from my mission, we started talking again, and I would see him at church. And so we began talking and being friends again.
And as you began to talk and you became friends, did this become more than a friendship?
It did. Yeah, we began dating again.
And about when was that, if you returned in what, the end of 2001, when would this be that you started to date again?
In the beginning of 2002.
And when you began dating in 2002, was it a situation where he could date other people or just you, or were you guys exclusive, or did you talk about it?
At that time, we were exclusive when we started dating again in 2002.
And was this in Southern California again?
It was, yes.
And while you are continuing to date in Southern California, did there come a time when there was a move from the Southern California area?
Yes, in 2004.
So it looks like from 2001 to 2004, you're dating in Southern California?
Yes,
And during that time, you and he are dating exclusively then, right?
we are from 2002 to 2004.
During that time, did there would come a time when you and he had some, for example, any disagreements during that period of time?
Sure, we had arguments or disagreements just like any normal couple.
And during those disagreements, would he ever, and any of those disagreements, he ever curse at you?
No, never.
Would he ever call you names?
No, he did not.
And during any of those times, did he ever strike you or physically advance on you or inflict any physical violence on you?
No, never.
And this was when you came back in around 2002 to when?
To when I moved in 2004.
And you said that you moved in 2004. So that was a continuous portion of the relationship then, approximately 2-3 years, something like that?
Yes. Yeah.
And when you moved, where did you move to?
I first moved to Phoenix.
And you were the first one to move?
No, actually, he was the first one to move, and he moved to Mesa.
And why did he move? You said, where did he move to?
To Mesa on Queensboro.
So is that the address where he was killed?
Yes.
And so when he moved there, do you know why he moved to Mesa?
Yes, I had a job in Irvine, California, Knox Company, and the entire corporate office moved to Phoenix, Arizona from Irvine, California. And I agreed to go with them and help in the transition. And so I was moving to Phoenix, and Travis, had wanted to buy a house and thought that Phoenix or Mesa in particular would be a good place to buy a house.
Why would it be a good place to buy a house in Mesa?
Because just the pricing for homes was better than in Southern California.
So who came out here first, you or Mr. Alexander?
Mr. Alexander did.
And then you came afterwards?
I did. A few months later, I moved out.
During the time that you were apart, what year again was that?
That was in 2004.
Do you remember the months that this was?
I believe it was in April of 2004.
And during that time, in April of 2004, that you were apart, did you still continue to be boyfriend and girlfriend?
Yes.
And so then you move up here. Did you move in with him?
No, we did not move in together. I had my own apartment in Phoenix.
And when did you arrive here? If you could give me the month, perhaps, and maybe the year.
When I moved into the apartment, that was in April of 2004.
And did you and Mr. Alexander continue to see each other?
Yes, we did.
Did you continue to date exclusively?
We did.
And did you continue to date for how long?
Then we dated until we broke up in 2005.
And about when in 2005 did you, a month?
It was around the end of 2005.
And during that time, from April of 2004, when you came out here, and the end of 2005, did you have occasion to meet with him on a, if you will, continuous basis?
Yes, we saw each other all the time.
Would you visit him at his home?
Yeah, I
Would
was
he-
there often.
And would he visit you at your place?
Yes,
And during this time, was there occasions where you and he would have disagreements?
there would be, but it wasn't very often. And we never really got mad at each other. We had a fun relationship and we liked being together.
But if, let's say that there was a disagreement, was there ever an occasion when he would scream at you?
No,
Was there ever an occasion where he would curse at you?
no,
Any occasion where he ever laid his hands on you?
no.
So who broke off the relationship at the end of 2005?
I did at the end of 2005. We had been dating for a while at that point, and I was ready for marriage. And at that time, he wasn't. And because of that, I felt like I needed to move on with my life and that we would be better dating other people so that I could get to that point of getting married.
And I assume that you were the one that actually gave him the news.
Yeah, at his house one evening, we sat down. I told him we needed to talk about our relationship. And we talked about it, and I told him that this is what I wanted. And if he didn't want to get married, then I was going to need to move on, and we were both going to need to move on. We had dated for long enough. And then at that point, he began to cry, and so did I. And we decided that we would remain friends.
And at that time, when you were having this conversation, and he's emotional, and you've described yourself as being emotional, at any point did he become physical, such as throwing you down, put his hands on you in any way, shape, or form?
Absolutely not.
Did he curse at you in any way?
No, he did not.
And did he raise his voice in any way?
No, he never raised his voice to me.
And so you have this conversation, you break up, and are you still living in Phoenix up north?
Yes, at that point I had moved, well, there was a time when I moved to Mesa and was living there for a while with my sister.
And so was this when you broke up with him?
Yes, and then soon after the breakup, I moved up to North Phoenix.
So at that time of the breakup, you had actually moved to Mesa, living with your sister.
Yes.
And after the breakup, you moved to Phoenix.
That's correct, yeah.
How far away was your home from his, the one that was in Phoenix? How far away was it in terms of travel time?
When I lived up in North Phoenix, I was at least 45 minutes from Travis's house.
And even though you were 45 minutes away, did you and he continue to socialize?
We did. I talked on the phone with him often.
And during that time, when you guys broke up, did you have occasion to start doing this text messaging thing, or was that not around so much back then?
Yeah, we didn't text all that much, mostly just talking on the telephone.
And when you and he would continue to talk as friends, any indication that he was ever, if he ever got angry at you, that he would ever scream at you?
No, he wouldn't.
Any time that he ever got angry that he would call you names during that time?
No.
Did he ever physically touch you in an inappropriate fashion, in other words, violently during that time?
No, he would never do that to me.
Did you continue staying here in the Phoenix area or not?
Yes, I was in North Phoenix.
And you stayed there and you're still there now?
No, I'm not there now. Sorry, I moved from that apartment in North Phoenix back to Riverside, California in 2008.
In what year?
2008.
And about what month did you move back?
I believe it was May of 2008.
And why did you move back to Riverside in May of 2008?
I moved back because I had quit my job, and I planned on just staying with the Knox company to help them transition, and ended up staying out here for, about 5 years or so. And I didn't plan on doing that, and so I wanted to then go back and start going back to school and do what I really have always wanted to do, which was teach school.
And are you teaching now?
I work for the Riverside School District as an instructional aide for special needs students.
And do you have a degree?
I do.
What is your degree in?
I have a bachelor's degree in liberal studies.
Going back to the time that you were with Mr. Alexander and you and he were dating monogamously, did there ever come a time that you ever saw when other people would come up to Mr. Alexander to discuss whether or not he was chaste? In other words, whether or not he was engaging in sexual relations?
Yes, I would. People like to joke around with him a lot, and he liked to joke around. And so sometimes people would come up to him jokingly and teasing him about that.
And teasing him that he was chaste or not?
That he was a virgin.
And what would his response be? Would he say, yes, I am, or no, I'm not? What would his response be?
He would just laugh about it at first. He would laugh and then quickly change the subject, but leaving the impression that he was.
That he was what?
That he was a virgin.
And so, did you ever hear him during the times that he was asked, did you ever hear him say or proclaim that he was?
No.
But you did see this exchange between him and other people, though, right?
Yes, I did.
You said that you and he broke up in 2005, and yet you moved back in May of 2008, back to Riverside, correct?
Yes.
During that time, that period that you were broken up, did you continue seeing Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, we were good friends.
And during the time, for example, that you were boyfriend and girlfriend, did you ever see any indication that he had, for example, photographs of little boys?
No.
Did you ever, at any occasion, see anything or any photographs of little girls that he had?
No.
Did you have occasion to be up in his bedroom?
Yes. Yeah, I was up
Once?
there all the time at his house. I was in his bedroom all the time at his house.
Any indication, for example, that there were any toys or any kids' toys or anything like that?
No.
Did you ever get on his computer to look at things?
No.
So you've never actually went on the computer then, correct?
No, I don't think I've ever been on his computer.
And with regard to the computer, who bought it?
I bought that computer.
And was it a gift from you to him?
It was a Christmas gift.
What year did you buy it, do you know?
I don't remember what year it was.
And during this time that you and he were friends, did you, for example, continue to come on over to his house?
Yes, I did.
Do you know whether or not he had a pet?
Yes, he has a dog named Napoleon.
And who has that dog now?
I have that dog.
And with regard to during the time that, again, during this time period where you guys are friends, did you continue being close friends such that you would tell each other whatever things that close friends tell each other?
Yeah, we did. We trusted each other.
And at any time during that time, did he ever scream at you obscenities or anything like that?
No, he didn't. Our relationship wasn't like that.
And at any time, did he ever physically touch you in any way inappropriately, for example, striking you or anything?
No.
Did he ever curse at you during that time when you left in May of 2008?
No, he didn't.
And even after you left in May of 2008, did you continue to have contact with him?
Yeah, I did.
And did you have contact with him, including these text messages?
Yeah, we would text sometimes.
And would you also talk on the telephone?
Yeah, we would talk on the telephone and text, but mostly talking on the telephone.
How about emails, that sort of thing? Would you do that?
Every once in a while, yes.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Approach, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take the noon recess at this time. Please be back in the designated area at 1:25. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice lunch. You are excused.
Stand for the jury.
We are at recess.